Africa is a continent of beauty, creativity, and innovative minds. It's a continent bursting at the seams with the world's most sought-after resources, and it's also a great platform to drive competitiveness with the best of the world. Under this banner, Brand Africa, established by entrepreneur Thebe Ikalafeng, is a platform for Africa to showcase what it has to offer business-wise. Brand Africa is a movement that is looking to create a positive image of Africa. In an evening of fine dining, networking, and good music, Brand Africa held its 4th annual Brand Africa 100 Africa's Best Brands Awards. And it offered an opportunity for consumers to celebrate excellence in some of the brands that elevate Africa.
Thank you. You may be seated.
I'm excited to be here tonight to share with you really why we started this initiative 2011 first time. And when we started it, people said, you know, it's just about honoring, giving certificates and all those. I said there's an important reason why we did this. In 1998, when Thabo Mbeki gave a speech at the United Nations University, the key thing that he said there is that as this continent is transforming, out of a reborn Africa must come new ideas, new concepts of technology, of science, new ideas of an Africa that is at peace and an Africa that is prosperous. Our job is to create brands. What Thabo Mbeki was talking about was the responsibility we have here as Africans to create brands. Now, I get asked all the time, why do we need to create brands? Well, we need to create brands for probably 3 important reasons. The first reason that we create brands is when Africans are building brands, the businesses behind those brands are going to do 3 things for us. The first thing they're going to do is they are going to create jobs, because thriving brands mean jobs created. We need that as a continent. Every country needs that. The second thing that we need, and that's going to happen when we are creating brands, is we are beginning to create the tax revenues which are going to stay here in our continent. I think you've been reading a lot about international companies which are not paying the due taxes to Africa and are coming to Africa and doing what they need to do and taking the money out of our continent. Our responsibility is to create the businesses and the brands which stay in this continent and create the tax revenues which are important to help us drive our own African agenda. Because when we have the taxes staying here, we are able to fund the public goods, the roads, the education that Africa needs so much. And the third important reason of why we need to do this is we must do this because when African brands thrive in the world, Africa thrives in the world.
Brand South Africa Chief Executive Kingsley Makubela echoes the sentiments shared by Ikalafeng, also highlighting that the image portrayed of South Africa to the rest of the world is one that requires continuous effort.
Events like this, they actually promote the brand identity, and that brand identity has to do with a number of private sector driven initiatives, and they are actually sending a message in terms of our competitiveness as a country, in terms of our ethos and values in promoting the well-being of the country.
Tell us about Brand South Africa. What do people perceive South Africa to be outside of the borders?
A lot of people see South Africa in different ways. Those who like to come and do business here, they see South Africa as a business destination. those who like to come and hear stories, they see the stories. So there are different perceptions that people are having, about the country. But we would like to see the country as a reliable partner in terms of branding within the continent, in terms of working with other parts of the world, because we are not an isolated country, we are integrated within community of nations. So it's very fundamental for us to work with other countries.
In Brand South Africa's involvement in this event, what successes are you perceiving in the next maybe 3 to 5 years?
I think the important thing about this event is to send a clear message that our brands, South African brands, are an integral part of the continental brand, and that they cooperate and compete with other brands within the continent. It sends a clear message that here we are united as African brands.
Brand Africa 100 is really about measuring how competitive we are, what progress we're making as Africans in creating those brands and products which are addressing African needs, African conditions, and are speaking to ambitions as Africans.
Let's speak about that progress. Tell us some of the success stories that Brand Africa has helped to promote.
I think the most important success that we have achieved. It is said, what gets measured gets done. We know how far we have to go. We know that in the last 3 years, African brands have accounted for 23, 24, 25% of the top 100 brands. That's not good enough, because if the consumers are Africans, the brands and the products and the services which serve them should be African. So to me, it's a success that we know how far we have to go or how far we've come. You look at in the list of the top 100, the number one most admired brand in Africa, the number one most valuable African brand, the number one most admired African brand, MTN, is one of those brands which really define who we are, which reflect our ambitions. You go to East Africa, one of the most successful regional brands, M-Pesa, which is the number one mobile brand in the world. It speaks to the extraordinary ambition and entrepreneurship and response of Africans. M-Pesa took financial access in Kenya from 5% in 2005 to 70% in 2010, according to the World Bank. That's progress. You saw today we also recognized some of those leading people, like the Lifetime Achievement Award, which we gave to Strive Masiwa, who started Econet before MTN, before Vodacom, before many of the other mobile brands here. We recognize him for his resilience, for his vision, for his extraordinary leadership. You saw some of the progress we made today, because what we also did today, we recognized Dangote. Now, Dangote is that extraordinary, amazing made in Africa brand. And we celebrate Dangote because in Africa we talk about industrialization. In Dangote we see the example. We saw some of the progress today with young brands like Kisua, young brands like Konga, young brands like Iswar. Those are brands which tomorrow will define ourselves by.
Speaking about all these accomplishments that Brand Africa has made, has this improved the investment appetite that the rest of the world has for Africa?
Well, everybody wants to be here. If you look at the total trade between China and Africa, or China in Africa, over 300 billion in 2015, as opposed to $1 billion in 1990. Everybody wants to be here. Africa is still the destination, not just for aid, but also for investment. Because while everybody else has a past, we have a future. We have an arable land. We have the resources. We have the people. We have the young people. We are the future of the world.
Do you see more emerging companies featuring within the competition as opposed to just 3?
This is an assessment. Because remember how we do this survey? We go to the consumers and ask them. They predominantly told us MTN is the number one brand. We speak to everybody. And in this instance, in the future, when Africans create more brands, those brands will come to the fore. When Africans create great brands, guess what happens? First, we are creating jobs. Second, we are creating the tax revenue to be able to pay for the public goods we want. Third, most important, we're creating something to be proud of, something that helps people celebrate Africa.
Some of the winners included some of the brands that the world simply cannot do without, and the smaller brands established in Africa are fast learning from them. African entrepreneurs who embarked on the entrepreneurial journey express some of the challenges that they experience in gaining significant credibility as viable brands from the African continent.
I think it gives African companies, African organizations, Africa and its people ample opportunity. It gives them an opportunity to showcase who they are, to be true to who they are, be proud of being South African, and realizing the potential that we as a country and as a continent have, and that we have a relevant space within the world despite what we faced.
I think it's a great platform for highlighting the work that very established brands are doing on the continent, whilst at the same time also shining a light on emerging brands like Kisua, like Isuara, like Konga.com. These are all new brands, all built by Africans from scratch in the last, 5 years. So it's really exciting at a time like this to have an organization and a platform like Brand Africa shining the light not just on established brands, but also on new emerging brands that are coming out of the continent.
It's inspiring to be here with brands like MTN. I have huge admiration for these brands, I would say the big brothers, and what they've accomplished on the continent. And for us it's also, I would say being encouraged also to continue the journey and know that we're all part of building the Africa of tomorrow and showing another vision of Africa.
The end game of Brand Africa is to ensure that the world is exposed to the wonders of Africa in the form of businesses that have the possibility to form an integral part of brands that households and even corporates worldwide cannot live without.